So, fellas, we all know the horror genre has been around for a very long time, and within that time period, it has created a ridiculous amount of franchises. New horror franchises are created each year, but today we're going to be looking at some of the classic and iconic franchises and ranking them. Of course, this is just my list and opinion, so you don't have to agree with it. In fact, I love debating this when it comes to these franchises. So let's get on with it, shall we? At the bottom of the list, we have Hellraiser. This one does hurt, as the first film is one of my favourite horror films. I love the gothic imagery, the amazing practical effects, the score, and the designs of the Cenobites. Especially Chatterer, he's the GOAT. I also liked that in an era of slashers, Clive Barker tried something new. The Cenobites weren't like villains you would see in other slasher franchises at the time, because Pinhead even says himself, we're angels to some and demons to others. So it was nice to see something different. The second film was also pretty decent, and is a worthy sequel. However, after that, the franchise just nosedived off a cliff. They took Pinhead to space, which is where a horror franchise goes to die, but even worse than that, they took him straight to DVD. Each entry was made to keep the rights to the franchise, and a majority of the straight to DVD sequels were never meant to be Hellraiser films. They all started as original ideas before the studio forced the directors to shoehorn in the Hellraiser IP. They also turned Pinhead into a generic horror slasher, which completely went against the character and the original film and novel. Eventually, the series would pump out two absolutely cheap stinkers with Revelations and Judgment, which are some of the worst films I've seen. Other franchises might have some bad installments, but they never stoop this low. The franchise does seem to be making a comeback, as the 2022 film was decent, and the new game looks good, but they will need a miracle to truly be saved. Next up is Friday the 13th. Now, I will probably get a lot of hate for having this so low on the list, but I'm just not a huge fan of this franchise. I find the first film to be really boring, and I think the only decent one is Chapter 4. I do think the character of Jason Voorhees is cool, and I will never deny his iconic status. I was even rooting for him in Freddy vs. Jason. However, I always get bored when watching the Friday films. Every film is pretty much the same until they started introducing gimmicks, like a girl with powers, sending him to Manhattan, and even sending him to space. To be honest, I will admit Jason X is a guilty pleasure of mine. It's just dumb fun. The first time I watched it was when I was like 10, and it was because I got it from a car boot sale. For you American viewers, a car boot sale is something we have in the UK, where basically it's a big open field full of loads of people with their cars and they're just selling all their junk. But yeah, I was like 10 years old walking around one, and I came across one selling loads of DVDs, and I saw Jason X, and it was for like £1, so I was like, oh yeah, I'd buy that. And that was another great thing about it. You could be so young, and adults would just be selling you these like 18 rated films or 18 rated games. It was amazing. But yeah, I bought Jason X, came home, and watched it like 3 times that day. I just thought it was so fun. But the franchise as a whole, I'm not the biggest fan of. I did have loads of fun with the Friday the 13th game though. It's a shame about all the licensing stuff that killed it, as all my best memories of this franchise are linked to that game. In sixth place, we have Halloween. The first Halloween film is one of the most iconic horror films of all time, and it helped set in stone all of the slasher tropes that originated in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The master of horror, John Carpenter, did a great job at making Michael Myers a household name. Pretty much everyone knows him. It's like you come straight from the womb with knowledge of him at this point. What's also great about Halloween is that it didn't just create an iconic villain, but an iconic heroine. Laurie Strode is the ultimate final girl. It also created a great character with Dr. Samuel Loomis. Let's not forget the score either. That has to be one of the most iconic horror scores of all time. However, other than the first film, the rest is pretty bad. The second is okay, and the third is actually underrated, but the others are just terrible. They tried to explain Michael's origin, and they linked him to the supernatural cult, which removed everything that made the character scary in the first place. They also have multiple timelines, including one where Michael is beaten by Busta Rhymes, and one where he is directed by Rob Zombie. Poor guy, nobody deserves that fate. The series did seem like it was making a comeback in 2018 with another rebooted Legacy sequel, but then the trilogy just shat out two awful entries with kills and ends. I guess the real curse of Michael Myers is just being forced into really bad sequels. Following on from that, we have The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The first film is just a masterpiece in the horror genre. It's an intense thrill ride from start to finish. And for the budget it was made on, it has such amazing cinematography, showing it had very talented filmmakers working on it. It also helped pioneer a lot of the tropes you see in slasher films, such as the killer being a large hulking person, using iconic weapons, and having a final girl. The influence from that film is still seen in many horror films today. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for the rest of the franchise. I know a lot of people love the second one due to its more comedic tone and the character of Chop Top, but I'm just not a fan of it. The series also has rebooted itself several times, and it has like 4 separate timelines, with each one just getting worse. I mean, this franchise has the Next Generation, Texas Chainsaw 3D, and the one from 2022, which are all awful. It also has 2 terrible prequels from different timelines, which try to tell Leatherface's origin, and it's just not needed. I will say though, I did enjoy the 2003 remake. It had the same cinematographer from the original film, Daniel Pearl, so it looks great, and it made Leatherface scary again. I also think it's the only other Chainsaw film that gets the family dynamic right, as that's what was so unnerving about the original. It was an entire fucked up family. It's a shame the other installments weren't any good, as I would like to have this franchise higher, since the original is just so good. And it's one of my favourite horror films of all time. Don't worry, Leatherface, I'm sure you'll make a good return one day. In 4th place, we have A Nightmare on Elm Street. Wes Craven made such a great film with the original that it helped put New Line Cinema on the map. It's known as the house that Freddy is built after all. It was such a genius idea to have a slasher killer be able to invade your dreams, since every other killer was a human in the real world at this point. It added a new fear factor, as now you weren't even safe whilst you were asleep. This is another horror franchise that has a great score, and it has great set design too. The Elm Street house is so iconic, and it still influences modern horror films. Robert Englund is just perfect as Freddy Krueger too. The franchise would not have been successful without him, which was proven in the 2010 remake. Even when he becomes the more comedic and quippy Freddy in the later films, he's still good, and you're only really watching them because of him. I think the second film is pretty underrated, and I like the body horror stuff they did in that one. And I think the third film is actually a really good sequel that has some genuine emotion to it. Unfortunately, the next few films did become too comedic, and eventually the franchise became a parody of itself. Wes Craven did save the franchise with A New Nightmare, which had a cool meta premise, and it made Freddy scary again. Like, he's much darker in that one. Unfortunately, the franchise was ruined again with the remake, where they made Freddy a nonce. Also, we can't forget about Freddy vs. Jason. Yeah, it's cheesy, but it's a fun time, and they should have just continued with that premise. We're entering the top 3 now, with Scream. Scream didn't just save Wes Craven's career, but it also saved the horror genre. The genre had been losing interest due to multiple bad sequels from previously mentioned franchises during the 80s. Therefore, Kevin Williamson wrote a script that would reinvent the genre and slasher subgenre with a meta twist. The meta element really helped make Scream stand out, and is a reason why it was popular, since the characters are aware of horror movie tropes just like the audience. Despite having a comedic element, the film was still able to be dark and have its scary moments. The franchise also always has a great whodunit mystery to keep you invested, even if they are kinda obvious in the more recent films. I can't really say the franchise has an awful film in it. Scream 3 is definitely the worst, but it's nowhere near as bad as sequels in other franchises. Even the modern films are still pretty good, and they make good money at the box office, showing they are still popular. I also like that the franchise has 3 great leads with Sidney, Gale, and Dewey, and we can't forget how iconic Ghostface is, especially the voice provided by Roger L. Jackson. I am looking forward to seeing Scream 7, as it's the first time series creator Kevin Williamson will be directing, but weirdly he did not write it, so I wonder how that one will turn out. Overall, I do really love this franchise, and I pretty much watch the first film every year. In second place, we have Child's Play. This franchise is another one where there isn't really an awful one in the series. It can be argued that 3 and Seed are bad, but I actually enjoy those two. I think they both have some iconic standout moments, like the whole theme park ending of 3, that was really cool, and I like the addition of Glenn/Glenda that Seed added to the Chucky lore. I think what helped this franchise is the fact the comedic elements were always there. The first film is the most serious with the most horror elements, but Chucky still cracks the odd joke, and the whole idea of a killer doll is silly anyway. I know some people think the transition to a full horror comedy with Bride and Seed ruined it, but I thought it was a natural evolution for the franchise. I still find those films pretty funny, especially Bride. It also helps that series creator Don Mancini has been involved in every project, and since Seed, he has been directing them, so he's still telling the story he wants to tell. It's not like multiple filmmakers and writers have come on board and drastically changed the series like other franchises. Even when they went straight to DVD, they were still good. Chucky is just such a good character. There's always going to be love for the series. Personally, my favourite is the second film, as that whole ending scene in the Good Guy Factory is just fantastic. And I love the look of Chucky with the blade in his hand. My favourite look is the stitched up one from Bride. It's just badass. I'm yet to watch the TV show, but I've heard good things, so I will most likely start it soon. Finally, in first place, we have Evil Dead. I love this franchise. I don't think it has a single bad film. I enjoy them all. The 2013 reboot and Rise aren't as good as the original films, but they're still good and they keep the spirit of Evil Dead. Even the TV show Ash vs. Evil Dead was amazing, and I'm still annoyed to this day that it was cancelled. But it did have a great ending. Apparently an animated revival is in the works, so I'm looking forward to that. I love the bloodiness and cheesiness of this franchise, which is in every installment. I also love that the low budget of the first film forced them to be creative with the filmmaking, especially with the cinematography. The series has always had incredible and wacky camera work, which helps it stand out. It's also good that they embrace the cheesy nature from the original, and that has now become Sam Raimi's signature style. Obviously, the second one is the best, and I think that goes without saying. That film is a fun time from start to finish, and it's what made Ash Williams such an iconic character, with his chainsaw hand, one-liners, and his boomstick. You can't talk about Evil Dead without Ash. He's honestly one of the best characters put to film. Bruce Campbell plays him perfectly. What makes Evil Dead stand out from the other franchises is the fact the star isn't the villain, but is instead the hero. He might be a goofball, but he knows how to kick Deadeye ass. All of the other franchises have a killer as the star, such as Freddy or Jason, so it's nice to see a hero be the face of a horror franchise. People always want to see Ash put against the likes of Freddy and Jason, and it almost happened on screen, but the studios didn't want to see Ash beating their own characters. It's really stupid as Freddy and Jason die in every film anyway, so why not let the hero Ash win? It's dumb, but it's an ego thing, I guess. At least it did happen in a comic crossover. Anyway, I love this franchise and I will watch anything that comes from it. I'm looking forward to Evil Dead Burn next year. It should be good. If there's one word to describe Evil Dead, it would be groovy. So that is my ranking of all the classic horror slasher franchises. Let me know if you agree or disagree, and where you would personally rank them. Also, if there's any other franchises you would like me to rank, like ones from the 2000s such as Hostel or Saw, or even some modern ones such as The Conjuring or Insidious, let me know. As usual, thanks for watching, fellas.